I am going to sort of walk you through what's in the toolkit itself, and then allow Katie, who has actually done these surveys and helped me sort of walk through the process of doing this work in practice at the local level, kind of fill that out. So without any further ado, I'm going to hit the screen share. And of course, I am, hold on just one second, and we'll go from the beginning. Okay, escape. Try there we go. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the election resources that we have on the Arts North Carolina website. We've had the election portal for many years now, where you can find a ton of resources, links to sign up for this webinar, obviously, but a lot of links to other resources within the Arts North Carolina We Vote Arts election sphere, as well as information about Arts Vote 2022 and their North Carolina voting fact sheet that we do as a partner with the Americans for the Arts Action Fund, links to Vote 411. There's lots of great information about when voting happens and what you need to vote. So it's a lot of good information for voters. We also have a separate page that's more focused specifically to nonprofit arts organizations, or nonprofit organizations in general, how you can and should engage with elections, as well as the things you cannot do when engaging with elections and candidates. Now, about a year ago, we launched our Arts Candidate Forum and Event Toolkit, which has been very successful. We might touch a little bit more on this. This is a really great guide for those arts communities that are considering having either a meet and greet or a forum or some other kind of candidate event coming up on the election season. It's got a lot of really simple bullet-pointed step-by-step instructions, as well as some real-world examples that actually happened here in North Carolina and helped inform that toolkit. But today we are talking about the Arts Candidate Survey Toolkit. And so before there's any questions, yes, there is still time to launch your candidate survey with plenty of time to get out the results before early voting. And hopefully today's webinar and the toolkit will kind of help lay out those steps so that you can see how easy it is to engage candidates with a survey, get those results back, make them public, and use that. This is a really great way to start conversations with candidates, and as well as soon to be elected officials, and also to make the arts issues and your issues an issue they talk about in the campaign, which of course is a really great way to make sure it's an issue that they deal with once they're in office. So we encourage everyone to do that. Obviously, the first step is creating a survey, right? You can't send the elected officials nothing. So you want to know which races you're going to target. Do you want to do city council and mayor only? Do you want to work on county commission? Do you also want to address state candidates with districts in your county? So kind of having an understanding about which races you want is definitely your first step. And then have a conversation to determine what issues are important to your creative community. It should not be one person deciding what should be on this survey. It should not be one person's opinions of what's important. There should be some kind of process or conversation to make sure that the entire creative community is engaged, or at least represented somehow in the survey that you're creating. You want to create both an online and paper surveys. And a good framework is to think of that paper survey as one page, as a one-page piece only, and that'll keep the survey from getting too long. Also make it easy to mail and distribute. Most candidates like to take online surveys now, but you do need to make sure that analog paper resource is something that you have available. A nice way to start the survey off is one or two questions about the candidate's arts background or their participation in the arts, either as an artist or attending the arts within the community that they want to represent. It's a good, easy question that's not necessarily issue-oriented, but gives them a chance to talk about their relationship with the arts and warm them up into the survey. And then you want, probably no more than 5 questions maximum about your top arts issues, right? So you got to, all the issues you could ask about, kind of call those down into the 5 most important, maybe combine a few. And because you don't want it to get too long, because these candidates do have a lot of these surveys to figure out. Now, with each question, it's a really good idea to provide some level of background information that might be facts and figures or stats or economic impact data or demographics for your community, something that sort of backs up the position that you might have and that gives them the information that they need in order to thoughtfully answer the question. Also, provide an easy answer, an easy way to answer each question with things such as multiple choice or yes, no, and then provide additional space for additional comments. So yes, you might get, just one candidate that might only select the multiple choice options and doesn't fill out the written surveys. But at least they have the option to give additional comments if they want. But providing that easy way to answer maybe might make the survey feel less daunting. And also make sure you take the opportunity to ask a few cross-sector questions. So some issues like maybe resource development or childcare or affordable housing that might relate to the arts and artists in a very real way, and you can make that connection. But that might also give the candidates an ability to sort of to not only speak to the connection of those different issues across the arts, but also for them to understand that the arts are interwoven amongst all sorts of issues in the community and don't live in a silo. But without any further ado, though, I'm going to hand it over to Katie, who's actually created a survey and launched it into several races in the local community.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, so we started doing candidate surveys a few years ago. In the past few years, the Arts Council here in Buncombe County has really been asked to take more of a lead on advocacy. And we have a very large creative community that was very siloed. And so our first job was to help build a network and bring that community together around shared issues. So we developed an arts coalition here, which is a series of 10 committees around different arts related issues. There's one on arts equity, there's one on education, trade, retail, even manufacturing. And we, each committee has a chair that meets with me monthly, and then the committees meet quarterly. And we establish our policy goals for the year. And then at those meetings, we discuss our progress on each of these goals. And so for our candidate surveys, when we decided, we had our new policy agenda, it was time to take that next step. And so I looked to Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund for guidance on how to do a candidate survey, and really modeled our format and the way that we've set ours up after what they do at the federal level. And so that's how we got the layout for this particular survey. And the Arts Coalition, we set the policy agenda, but we can't ask every policy issue that we've included in our agenda. So we worked with those committees to refine. We surveyed them on what was the most important top 5 topics that we need to cover. And we tried to pick things that weren't just arts issues, as Nate said, but things that really were hot topics within the community that were impacting the arts sector that we wanted to work towards. And so if you'll go to, yes, awesome. So what you'll see is how we've crafted this is we start with, and we do ours online mostly, but we also have that PDF paper copy if candidates want to use that. I'll say that they all have so far submitted through the online survey. And so in that survey, we start with, this is why we're asking you to do this. This is when we need it by. And this is, who it's going towards, the audience is going to. And then we start with 2 questions that help give, they're an icebreaker for the candidate, but it's really good information for us as an advocate to understand what their arts background is. It helps us moving forward as we work with them if they're elected to office. And so those are not throwaway questions. They're really helpful questions for you as the one sending out the survey and doing the advocacy work. Then, as Nate said, with these 5 topics that we've picked as our most important issues, we provide really clear background information for the candidates. Do not expect them to know anything about what you're talking about. This is your chance to make sure that they learn that these are issues within your community that they need to be aware of. And data is really important. We've done a lot of reporting over the last few years to have that data to be able to include with these issues. You got to be able to talk business to really get people to buy into what you're proposing.
And I think, and I'll
okay.
add to that, Katie. I think that one of the great things about these surveys is that you're finding out how candidates feel about these issues and making that available to the public. But you're also, like you said, gathering information for advocacy, like, my daughter takes ballet, or I go to the symphony all the time, and that's something you can talk about. But you also have the ability to put those background statements in, which means you're kind of using this as a way to get your candidates to read a 1-pager of all your talking points, right? Like it's like you're educating them, right? And they have to fill it out because there's literally a test, right? They have to respond to it. So this is a really great way to educate elected officials as well as future elected officials. And if you repeat some of the questions year after year, then it helps to penetrate that as they come back.
Yeah. That's the important thing to know with advocacy, as Nick knows all too well with advocacy work, it takes years to get results. Don't expect, that this candidate survey will provide immediate results. A lot of our questions are, tweaked as we make slow progress through, from year to year. But we tend to have a lot of the same issues that we're working towards, such as local government funding for the arts, which we've made great headway on. But, it'll continue to be one of our issues that's included on our candidate surveys. One tip, you do want these questions to be somewhat leading for the candidate to agree with you. You do want to be able to have, proof that they agreed with this issue to be able to show them later. Remember when you said that you supported this? Because I've got the documentation to prove it. So of course you don't want to be completely leading, but somewhat leading is okay on these surveys. Absolutely.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to actually getting the survey out there, right? So you created this amazing survey, you have a hard copy, you have a digital copy. The very first thing is that, you've decided which races you want, but you need to make sure that the list of candidates and the contact information you are using is the official list of candidates. Because you like there may be a independent candidate or a libertarian candidate or a Green Party candidate that you're not even aware of because the front runners are Democrats and Republicans. You need to get the official list of all the candidates that are running for a race. You can get that either at the North Carolina State Board of Elections. But I encourage you to actually reach out to your county board of elections, because it's just a good group of people to have a relationship with anyway. And they are going to be the ones administering the election in your county. So they would definitely know what the most updated list is, as well as the contact information you should use. And then the next thing is that, and this is so important as you move through this entire process of of communicating with candidates, especially if you are a 501c3 nonprofit, treat them all exactly the same. So you have to send the survey. If you're sending it by email, you send it to all of the candidates by email. If you are sending it by email and letter, they all need to get email and letter. And then if you are if you haven't, as you follow up, make sure, you don't have to follow up with the ones that have already completed the survey, obviously, but you want to do the exact same kind of follow-up to all those candidates that haven't completed the survey. It's usually a good idea to give them 2 to 3 weeks to complete. If it's too long of a deadline, it might they might put it off and then forget about it. But you want to have a long enough that it doesn't have to be done in the next 48 hours. You want to make sure that your deadline for them to return that is 1 week before early voting, because early voting is a really great sort of benchmark or timeline so that you can get this material out. So if you can get it out a day or two before early voting begins, which this year is on October 20th. And so everybody mark your calendars. So that's sort of your timeline, is that you're hoping to get these surveys out and back and then published before October 20th. So just kind of keep that timeline in mind, and early voting is a good way to benchmark that. And when you're writing the letter or the initial email, very clear, brief introduction, introduce who you are or your organization is, what you do, why you're doing this survey, and and maybe one factoid about the impact, or how many people are the arts employ in your area, or something like that, which isn't really necessary, but really just a clear introduction: who you are, why you're doing the survey, please complete this, with very clear instructions on how to do it and the date. And then send those reminders to all those candidates that haven't completed the survey, but the same way, right? If there's a major candidate that hasn't replied, you don't get to talk to them more. You don't get to send them more emails or follow up with their wife to make sure that they did it, unless you're going to follow up with everybody's spouse to make sure that they did it. You can do this before the primary or the general election. And so surveys sometimes can get more penetration and more response in the primary, because there's a wide range of candidates, particularly if you are looking at a race that's going to get decided in the primary. Your survey's got a lot better chance of getting done before the primary, but that does not mean that if you haven't done one this year that you should wait until the next primary. Go ahead and do one for the general election, because this is really still important. And particularly with local elections, general elections are very, very key, and folks, you do have a really good chance of getting those surveys returned. And most important, and I know that everybody makes fun of me for saying it, but it's that attitude of gratitude. Have the attitude of gratitude. Thank the candidate for their time in completing the survey. Thank the candidates for be grateful for their willingness to commit to public survey when you ask them to do the survey. So always just be really grateful, and because you're building a relationship with this survey, possibly with somebody who you're going to have a relationship with as an elected official, and being grateful for their time and that communication is really key. And Katie, I know you've actually surveyed these candidates locally, which Arts North Carolina used to survey like all 170 offices of the North Carolina General Assembly, which, by the way, is crazy. And we had a very low turnout because we weren't the local partner. We were just the lobbying organization from Raleigh, which is why we want to see this done locally, and why Katie and others have had such great success.
Well, Nate, you're absolutely correct. The key to this is the attitude of gratitude. They're going through a really grueling election in many cases. They've got a lot of requests on them, and it goes a long way to be really nice about it. Also, they really appreciate clear communications every step of the way. Make sure that as you post things, as things are going to be posted and shared, and we'll get into that in a minute, that they're informed, that they know things are coming, that they're prepared. They appreciate that a lot. So as far as doing the actual questionnaire, as you can see, we kind of created the letter within the survey, kind of giving them the background. We share this through Google Forms, and in Google Forms, you can send an email with it. And so it's attached to their emails, and I can track who has and who has not completed the survey. And I can send reminders to those that have not through Google Forms. So that is a very helpful tool. And very affordable tool for tracking these surveys. Also, you can convert the responses into a spreadsheet, which is also helpful as you compile the data later on. So my little plug for using Google Forms. So, you want to, work with that Board of Elections, make sure you get all of the correct email addresses so that you can send this to all the candidates. I will say, I do a general search to find their campaign pages and their contact information, but there are some that are extremely hard to find, particularly in the primary, as these are, ones that may not be moving forward. Usually it's much easier to find email addresses once they made it to the general election, but not always. But your local Board of Elections is extremely helpful for if you cannot find an email, they'll give it to you. So you can email them and request that information. So as I send out this initial request about 3 weeks before it's due, and you're not going to get much immediate action. You might get a few follow-up questions, but not too many. It's that 1 week before mark where you start seeing some action. So it's really important. Remind them a week before. Say, hey, this is coming up next week. I just wanted to remind you. This is how we're going to be sharing this data. So you want to be sure to be included. And then the day before, for those that have not completed the survey. Hey, look, all these candidates have completed the survey. You don't want to be left out, do you? Be sure to complete the survey by tomorrow. And then the day of, hey, you're going to be left out. This is your last call. And we're going to say, such and such did not respond on our page. So you don't want that, please. But again, attitude of gratitude the whole way. Really nice to them about it. But you do have to hammer the candidates to get it done. I'll say that having, the being able to do that quick answer is really helpful, particularly for those stragglers. A lot of them won't add, but some of them will write novel responses on the comments, and that's good. That's good. If they've got more to say about the topic, that's great. Do not edit it in any way. You have to share it exactly how they give it to you. So you're going to have to share a novel if that's what they write. You could limit the characters if you wanted to, keep it to a certain amount, but I do prefer to keep it more open-ended and let them share with me whatever they want. It's their opportunity to do that. Those are my tips for that, Nate.
Absolutely. No, if a candidate wants to write a novella about the arts, absolutely. Though absolutely. And of course, the next step, once you get all of this data, and I will actually, I want to emphasize, yes, do not be afraid to say, oh, here's the list of candidates that have successfully completed the survey, because that's their competition. So that will motivate them to do it. And that mention of and we will also be listing those candidates that did not complete the survey, right? So, it's make sure that you say it nicely with that attitude of gratitude, but that sort of soft nudge threat, if you will, is going to be really useful to getting them to do it. So anyway, so now you've got all of this great information. You're a few days before early voting starts. You got to get that information out there, right? And so I'm imagining that most organizations that have put the time and effort into this probably have a website, and that is the first and foremost. Go ahead and have a layout where folks can easily look through these responses, understand the questions, understand the races, understand what they're looking at. And we'll go through some examples of that here in a minute, so you can kind of see how that gets put together. Katie did an amazing job, so I want her to kind of walk us through that as well. Get the word out through your email networks, your social medias, right? Let people know we have done a survey, we have engaged these candidates, they have responded, here is the information. prior to going out. And it's also a great way to remind people that early voting is starting in a few days, or when election day is. And you can so tie in the fact that you did this survey with voting reminders, et cetera. So just, put it into there. Also, you had this wonderful network of folks that you engaged to find out what was the most important issues. So ask them to do the same with your survey, right? Like if you talk to 10 arts companies or arts educators, like have them start spreading the word, and to go to your website and to check out these responses, and utilize that network to get the word out the same way you got their input on the questions themselves. Now you can also create a press release, which is a really great way to sort of put together a simple statement about the survey and what you did, and get that out to a large number of news outlets. Sometimes press releases don't get picked up, and it can be easier to go ahead and contact media outlets directly, particularly if one of those organizations, some of your partners advertise in a local newspaper, maybe going together and leveraging that relationship a little bit to say, hey, this information is out there. Let me know. And Katie's done a great job as well of getting that into the media. So I'll let her talk a little bit about that. But as Katie said, keeping the candidates informed every step along the way is key, right? Today, we're going to be putting this up on our website and it will be live. On Monday, we will be sending an email out to everyone, letting them know. This article will be appearing in the such and such publication. Let them know when those are happening, because not only does it keep them from getting blindsided, but it also allows them to know that what you're doing and that you're an engaged partner, and that you appreciate that they took the time to fill out the survey, and that you're doing your best to get that information and their what they put into it out into the world. Now I know I said it in great big letters in red and everything, but I cannot stress this enough. 501c3 nonprofits, you cannot at any time or in any way show a preference for a candidate or imply an endorsement for a candidate or their response. Don't even say publicly in a joking way, if two candidates have responded differently, something like, well, you can guess which one I like, right? Like, stay clear of it. You need to show absolutely no preference whatsoever about how they responded or the candidate that, because nonprofit organizations, 501c3 nonprofits cannot endorse candidates or their positions, and it does run you in risk of losing your 501c3 nonprofit status if someone were to force the issue with the IRS. So,
just to add to this, one area where this is, the biggest issue for me is people want to interview me about the results of this candidate survey, and they want my take. And I have to be extremely careful about what I say, to only speak in general terms about the responses we received, and not show any favoritism to one of the candidates.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, competition and partisan drama sells blog posts, sells papers, sells radio time. All those things, reporters are going to want to push you in that direction. So caution when you're heading in, when you're having that conversation. Great. Well, I want to let you kind of talk a little bit about how you went about all of this, Katie, because you did such a really great job all the way across the board.
So what I'll say is you definitely want to get all the information at least a week before early voting starts, because it takes time to compile all this data and present it. And so you're going to give yourself time to put it all together. We have a WordPress website, and we use Divi filterable portfolios to display all the candidates. So you can click on the candidate and you'll get more detailed, all their detailed responses there. We also provide a PDF of the questionnaire so people can see exactly what we gave to the candidates, as well as a PDF of all the responses so that they can see all of them together, instead of having to click on the individual candidates. And we regroup those by the races, so that people can look through those. But this is very visually appealing. and a really easy way to sort through a lot of dense information. One thing I'll say before you share this publicly, I mean, you put it on your website and it's public, but before you like promote that it's up on your website, do let candidates know, because they will go check their profile and they'll let you know if you made any kind of mistake. And it's really important that you fix those before too many people see it. And so it's just, I find it very helpful that they provide me with that service just to make sure that I have everything up there, just how they want it before I share it.
And again, campaigns are grueling, and how you're portraying yourself to the public is something that they're very focused on. So you want to start that relationship already. I also really like how you've got it pretty easily navigated, how you can go between city council, mayor, and county commission, because having a lot of races can be pretty confusing. You want to talk a little bit about how you laid out each individual candidates? You did a page for each survey response?
Yep. So each of the candidates has their own page with all of their survey response. And so it's got their, immediate response to the different multi-choice, rating, whether they strongly agree or disagree. And then it's got all the comments that they chose, and it's kind of cut off so you can't see that. But I tried to provide the question with the background because, the community may not understand what we're asking either. So you need to provide that for the community as well as to the candidate to educate everyone on the topics. And then, have that immediate top level, whether they strongly agree or disagree or they're neutral or whatever. And then, their additional comments.
Excellent. And so you got it on the website and you put it out in an email and you get it out via social media, but then how do you get here, Katie?
All right. So when I originally started doing candidate surveys, I put out a press release. They didn't go anywhere. And so I reached out to one of my contacts at the Mountain Express, who happens to be an arts editor, and said, if we were to give you this information and let you present it as a feature story, an exclusive feature story first, would you pick it up? And they were like, yes. And so for the last 2 times that we've done this, they have picked up our surveys. And, at this time in the election, they're like really looking for things to report on. They're reporting on the same things over and over. And this is a nice, fresh spin for them. So this can be a really good relationship. The angle they like to take is my opinion on the results, because there's so many results. Answers that it's really hard for them to condense that into one article. So this is where I've had to be real careful as to what I've said, just general comment about, I was really surprised at, everyone's arts background. Every one of the candidates has some connection to the arts, and that's really good, that kind of thing. Or to really talk about, this is opportunity to really highlight some of those issues. Again, educating the public about them, and encouraging them to see how the different candidates responded.
Fantastic. And yeah, I think that's it, talking generalities and always try and drive people back to the site. And of course there'd be a link to to your website and your webpage with the results in the article, which helps.
Yeah. And that one thing I'll add is when we get to this point, having all that buy-in from different organizations and artists prior, including their opinion as we develop the questions, comes in real handy when we get to this point, because as you said, Nate, they're very valuable for helping you spread the word.
Right. And it's and anytime you're talking to the press, yes, you're talking about the survey, but it doesn't hurt to mention some of those really great factoids that you had as your background information, to drop that as the press. Why is this important? Well, because there's umpteen hundreds of thousands of tax revenue generated in Buncombe County, or whatever that factoid is, that's that doesn't hurt if it gets dropped in a news article about the arts, is a great way to go as well. I also will, I wanted to show you guys that it is not only Katie. She is not the only person in all of North Carolina that is doing this work. There's several arts councils across the state. Particularly, I'll point out Arts and Science Council of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. You can see this is actually 2 different rounds of elections that they were doing specifically for local elections. That Arts Vote 2021 list, they did a candidate or a candidate survey for each town within Mecklenburg County. Charlotte's municipal elections got moved to 2020 for a variety of reasons. So that's why the city of Charlotte is separate. And so all of those surveys are different and speak to all of the issues within Wake County for that specific municipality, so that they could do a little deeper dive there. And again, something that we said touched a little bit on in the very beginning, but I'll restate, is that make sure that the questions in your survey, if you're doing multiple races, that the questions are either specific to that race or general enough that it applies to all races. You do not want to ask someone running for state office about the city budget, right? Like, make sure you stay on topic. And this is just an example. This is how ASC does a layout that is that's a little bit different than what Katie did. They have a 1 page that then has the question at the top, and then each one of those questions has a drop down with the response from each candidate, and then you've got the pictures of the candidate at the top. So so instead of doing a separate page with the response for each one, this also works very well. It doesn't necessarily, it's not as easy to tell which candidate goes to which names with this layout, but if you don't want to have a lot of different pages set up on your web page, this might be a format that that would work well for you.
Well, and Nate, I'll just say that we've done it both ways, and
Okay.
this works if if the comments are shorter. If you've got really long comments, you probably want to do it the other way.
Yeah, it gets to be a novella if it gets too long, right? We've had a great conversation about toolkits, and I am going to get to questions, but first we did talk a little bit about the beginning about candidate events. And Katie, you've got a few things coming up that I'd love for you to kind of talk to folks through what you're doing up there in Buncombe County.
So this year we're graduating from surveys to candidate forums for the first time. And we're doing one for our state. This is our state senators and state House of Representatives that we're going to be talking to. Then we're going to do county commissioners later in September. And then we're going to interview city council and mayor candidates for the city of Asheville in October. The questions for each of these events will be slightly different. They'll be very tailored to the race. But all 3 of these events will start with a meet and greet. And the real key with this is to help our arts leaders meet these candidates and start building relationships with them. That's why we're doing the meet and greet portion. And then again, this is about us educating our potential elected officials on the issues that are really important to our arts community. And demonstrating to them by our physical presence that they're really important to the community. And so we'll see how it goes. Wish me luck. I'll have to say, Nate, your toolkit has been like my Bible as I have planned this event. It's been extremely helpful to walk me through all the steps for creating these types of events.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I will take that shameless plug, and I do encourage everybody to check out that toolkit because it is pretty step by step. And now that we've had, I do want to give a shout out to Rhonda Bellamy at the Wilmington Arts Council, as well as Charles Faniff, who is with South Arts now, but it was with United Arts Council at the time, both of whom had done different types of candidate events, and they sort of walked me through this process. If you are a little afraid of doing a town hall or a forum style event, I encourage you to still look at that toolkit, because you can just do the meet and greet. And there's an example of that happened for the Raleigh mayor and city council race. It was not a question thing. It's just, but you can do just a mixer. Maybe do a 5-minute presentation about the arts, so that you're still informing candidates, but you're not putting them on the spot. You don't have to have a moderator, but the toolkit lays all of that out in nice step-by-step bullet points. Probably, if you haven't started planning a candidate event, trying to get one done now before the election might be a little challenging, but I encourage everybody to check it out for election seasons coming up. So this is, as I had mentioned before, this is going to be available on our website, and the slides will be available as well. So you can use all of these links that'll be on the slides. Checking out the Arts NC election portal, the candidate survey toolkit, obviously, as well as the candidate forum and event toolkit, the Asheville Area Arts Council and their election information. Definitely, I know we all want to find out how those Arts AVL town hall events are going over the next month, so we can find out how. And we certainly have included the Americans for the Arts Action Fund's federal candidate art survey, which was sort of the premise for Katie's, and did a really great job of that background question, easy answer comments, right? Like, it's a really great format that's easy to use. So please check out those resources. And now, if anybody's got any questions about these resources, or how to create the survey, how to administer the survey, how to spread the information, or anything else, let me know, and I'll go ahead and stop the share. I don't know if we've got anything in the chat or in the Q&A. Feel free to drop those on.
There are no questions at this point, so I guess you guys did a great job of covering all the material.
We may have covered everything. Well, excellent. I really do hope that that folks consider engaging in these surveys. And I mean, yes, we did talk about it for close to an hour, which so it might seem really complicated, but we're just trying to give you all those little tips and tricks. It really is not a ton of work, right, Katie? It's a really great way to educate, engage, and build relationships. And so it's a wonderful advocacy tool in a lot of ways before people are even elected officials. Katie, did you want to say anything more about that? Maybe has anything happened in Buncombe County that may have had something to do with your?
So we had very little local government support here in Buncombe County, and I am happy to say that in this year's budget, Buncombe County included a block grant that equaled 50 cents per capita in funding for the arts that they awarded to the Asheville Area Arts Council for us to add to our granting programs. So that took a couple years of us showing how far below they were other counties in their support for local government. So that's a report that's put out every year by the North Carolina Arts Council, showing what kind of support each arts council gets from their local government. Also the way that they do support the arts was through a strategic partnership grant, and arts funding was going down every year compared to other social programs. And so being able to document that and share that with them and show them how that funding was going down and what the problems were really led to making these changes. So that was number one question in our candidate survey since I've started, really pointing out that importance of that local government funding and how far below they were. And so they want that question to go away, I think. I think that's why they gave me funding.
Well, and I know that as I had conversations about Asheville around the state, right? Like, Asheville has a reputation of being very artsy and bohemian, and so I'd be like, yeah, and the local government really isn't funding the arts in Asheville, and people around the state would be like, that can't be true. It's their brand. And so again, candidate survey, wonderful way to kind of show them how to live up to their brand. So
Well,
fantastic.
and just to point out with that, you got to go about it as a partner. And,
Right.
I'm not attacking you. Let's fix this together kind of attitude. Because as soon as you turn a mob on them, you're not going to make any progress whatsoever. And so that's part of that education piece too, is, helping it develop over time with clear communication and not turning it into, an attack on any party.
Well, and for those of you that may have seen some of my Advocacy 101, and I talk about methodology, and I say when you move into the public arena, and that you have to be really careful because you can make friends quickly and you can make enemies quickly as well. Like, this is a perfect example of a way that you can make friends, that you can be in partnership with local officials, but do it in a very public and open way. And so you're educating the public, you're educating the local officials, and you have a really good foot in the door with the press. And when they're looking for those stories, and it's a win-win-win for everybody all the way around. So this is a really great way to kind of move your advocacy into the public awareness sphere. All right, so it looks like we may have answered all of our questions, and we're coming up on about an hour. So Katie, I want to thank you so very much for taking your time to help me author this this survey this toolkit to help folks do this work locally, as well as thank you to all of you that came and were able to join us today. And please spread the word. Like I said, this is going to be available on our website and on the toolkit page. And so share that link, and folks can share those questions. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. You have a great day. And
You too.
everybody out there